In the last lesson, I gave you an introduction to layout files and how to begin organizing your presentation layer. But now, I'm going to switch over to this little blog template. It makes a bit more sense for what we're working on. So your job is to pause this video and figure out if you can recreate this on your own. Now you'll see, if we switch over, I've already done that. So your job is to figure out how. I'll give you a few hints. First, of course, you're going to view the source and grab all of this. Next, you're going to replace the hard-coded Bootstrap files with their respective versions on a CDN. Next, you want to grab this little bit of blog or template-specific CSS and just throw it into a CSS file in your project and reference it. Next, I want you to take specific sections and extract them into their own partials. So for example, this corresponds to the blue section on the top. That could be your navigation area. The same will be true at the very bottom. This stuff, that can be your footer, so you could extract that as well. Finally, all of the posts here, we could put that within a posts.index view. And then finally, rounding out the layout file, well, about and archives, maybe that could go in the layout file, maybe that could go in the index partial. It just depends upon what we're building. But for now, figure out how to place these two sections within your layout file. Okay, hit pause and try this out right now. All right, I'm going to assume you've done it, or you just don't care. Let's switch over to what I have now. Let's see how I did it. We're going to go to Resources, Views, and you'll see right off the bat, we have our layout file with a handful of partials. So to start, we have our master page, where we reference Bootstrap on a CDN, and then we also reference blog.css, where I have created this little file. Okay, let's come back. Next, I pull in the navigation section, and again, just copy and pasting from the Twitter Bootstrap example. Further down, we have the main Bootstrap blog, so that will correspond to this. You could even extract that into a header partial if you want. Or have one header partial that includes this as well as the navigation. It just depends. Finally, we have a row. So with Twitter Bootstrap, we will create a row so that we can have two different columns. So we have the first column, which will be stored with posts index. And this is where we have all of the blog posts that are currently hard-coded in. So that takes care of this side. But next, if we come back, after the content, I'm including a sidebar section. This is another column, and this is where we have the about and the archive section that you see right here. Finally, at the very bottom, I am including a footer section that just contains some of the stuff we need here. And that's all there is to it. It's not that hard, and it's a really good exercise. So if you haven't done it, make sure you do this. The best way to learn is to actually stop watching the video and start typing. Now, with that done, the next step is I'd like to create a form so that we can begin creating posts and displaying them dynamically. So maybe the URI will take the shape of posts/create. That's a common convention. Well, right now, it's not going to work. It's assuming that we are showing a post, which is not what we want. Let's come back to our routes web file, and we'll say, if you visit posts/create, and by the way, I'm just going to comment that out for the time being. When we hit the create URI, I will reference a create method. Okay. So let's add that. Create will load a post.create view. All right, let's create it. Resources, views, posts, create.blade.php. Now, as always, we are extending our layouts.master file, and then we'll have our section for the content. And we'll say something like create a post. All right, let's come back and give it a refresh. There we go. But now, because we didn't place it within a column, the sidebar is pushing over to the side. Let's fix that. You'll see that it looks like the example uses call sm8, so we will too. All right, refresh, and now we have a main section that is 8 columns wide. All right, so next we're going to have our form. Now again, because we're using Twitter Bootstrap, we get a lot of the styling out of the box for us. So I'm going to go to getbootstrap.com/CSS, and here's some form code. Just saves us a lot of time, I think. So we'll paste it in right here. There we go. And then again, let's do some spacing here. All right, let's see what we get there. Yeah, starting to look okay. So maybe we'll have an HR there. And of course, this is optimized for a login form. So let's see, we're going to have a section for the title of the post, right? And that will be a text type with a placeholder, no placeholder. Okay, come back, refresh, that looks good. But of course, we should also give our inputs a name. If we want to submit them to the server, they need a name. Next, we'll need a text area for the body. And this will be called body. And we'll give that a name of body. Finally, we should give that a class of form control, right? It's just a Twitter Bootstrap class. That'll give it some better styling. Finally, file input can be deleted. No checkbox, but we will have a submit button, and maybe we'll call that publish. Okay, maybe say button primary? Better. So does that look good to you, and does that all make sense? We've set up a form to publish a post, and the form consists of a title input, a body input, and a button to publish it. However, when we click that button, where is it going to post? Well, it will post to, well, anywhere we want. But if we are following basic RESTful conventions, then we will submit to /posts. Here's the basic shape that takes. Quick crash course. If we can represent a resource, something like posts, well, we will visit /posts to view all of the posts. Think of that as the equivalent to select star from posts. If we want to create a post, we would go to /post/create, and that would display a form just like this to create a post. Now, when you submit this form, we actually want to store the post in the database. So that would submit a post request to /posts, and these would be get. So a post request to the resource, that means we are storing a new one in the database. Next, if you want to edit an existing post, you would go to post/the ID, whether or not that's a number or a slug, and then /edit. Now, similar to this one, that will display a form not to create a post, but to edit the post. And when you submit that form, well, it's probably going to submit a patch request to /post/the identifier. However, if you think about it, that URI, that's basically the same as if you want to view a specific post. So if I were to say, make a GET request to post/ID, well, that should display just the single post. If we switch back, that should display this post alone, the permalink. So you'll notice that if we follow this convention, we can use the exact same URI to represent different actions that we want to take place. And we use the request type, whether it's GET or POST or PUT or PATCH or DELETE or HEAD, we use those to determine and instruct the server where to direct the request. Very useful. Now, the same will be true for a delete request. So if I want to delete a post, maybe you click a button that says delete post. Well, the convention would be use this endpoint and then set the request type to delete. And that will instruct the server, okay, we are deleting this resource. So as such, trigger this action rather than maybe the show action. All right, so does that all make sense? If this is new to you, take a minute, seriously, take a minute and write this down or take a snapshot because you'll want to reference this over and over. Great, this is your basic resourceful controller. Now, if we switch back, we are creating a new post. We're creating the resource. So we submit a post request to /posts. Now, there's one other thing we should add here, but I'm going to let us run into the error first. So with that in mind, let's go to our routes web file, and we're going to register a new one. When we respond to a post request, and notice the method here, that can be the request type, like put or patch or delete. In our case, a post. So the convention was /posts will trigger post controller. And now, once again, the convention is to call this method store. I'll show you a little trick. If you ever generate a controller, maybe tasks controller, and if you add the -r flag, yes, that will create a controller, but -r instructs it to make it a resourceful controller. So in effect, it's going to have the boilerplate for all of the various methods that you'd want to respond to. Useful, right? So quickly to go over this would respond to /tasks. This would respond to /tasks/create. This one would be post to /tasks. This is exactly what we just went over. Show, well, that will be a GET request to /tasks/an ID. Edit will be GET tasks ID/edit. Then update, that will be if you submit the form. So patch, do tasks/an ID. And then finally, destroy would be a delete request to tasks/NID. So yeah, keep that one in mind. -R will automatically populate these methods for you. It's pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to delete this and get back to our job. A post controller now requires a store method. Here is where we create a new post using the request data, save it to the database, and then redirect somewhere in our application, maybe to the home page. Now, first job, getting the request. Well, let's do this. Let's die and dump, and I'm going to call this new request helper function, and I'm going to say, give me all of the request data. All right, let's give it a shot. Refresh, we're going to go to post/create, some title, some body, publish, but no, it didn't even let us submit the form. Laravel squawking token mismatch exception, and then you can see this verify CSRF token. This is something that Laravel does out of the box to protect you. Let's take a quick look at what CSRF is. Very, very quick. In the documentation, Laravel makes it easy to protect your application from cross-site request forgery. This is a type of malicious exploit where unauthorized commands are performed on behalf of the user. So it's basically a way of tricking the user, where they think they are submitting a form on some external website. However, that form is posting to your website or to my website, and it's tricking the user. That's why it's called request forgery. So what Laravel does out of the box is it automatically generates a token for every single session we have. Next, we can echo out a hidden input. I know this sounds complicated, but just stick with me. It'll protect you and keep you safe. Anyways, next, we can use this function to echo out a hidden input that has the CSRF field. And then when we submit the form, Laravel is just going to make sure that those two line up. And if they do, the request comes from your server and everything's safe. But if they don't match up, something fishy is going on, so you'll get a token mismatch exception. All right, let's go back and spit that out. CSRF field. So that's going to return a hidden input. And as a general rule of thumb, for all of your forms, include this call. Okay, so let's come back. And I want you to take a look at our form. There it is. So CSRF field echoed out this section right here. And notice that long value? That's the unique token that Laravel is going to compare against what it has in the session. And if they match, you're all set. Everything's fair. We can continue on. Okay, let's try it. My title, my body, publish it, and here we go. All right, so let's take a look. In our post controller, we ended the execution, and then we dumped all of the request data to the page. And that's going to give us an array. You can see that these correspond to our inputs. But even better, you can do things like this. So what if we were to say request, and I just want the title? All right, we can add it there. Refresh, and now we get that. Or the request body, and we get that. Or maybe I only want the title and the body. This is useful when a form could submit with a lot of data, but you're only interested in a couple things. Okay, well that will give you a new array that contains just those two. All right, well it sounds like we have everything we need. So let's create a post, new app post. Now, if you're somewhat new to namespacing and frameworks, this is a common pitfall. Somebody tries to new up a post, but well, let's just give it a shot. Yep, we get class post not found. So what's the deal here? Well, think about it. A controller is namespaced. So think of this as folders. We are now 3 levels deep into a folder. But right here, you said I wanted to use post, but it's assuming you're going to append that on. So it's assuming you're asking for this. And you'll see that this corresponds right here. So what we want to tell PHP is that no, we don't want that. We want to use from the root. We want to pull in post. So the solution is either do it like this and then reference post like this, or begin your class path with a backslash. And this is our way of saying begin at the root, not at the current namespace. Anyways, this is good enough. So post, I'm going to set the title. And actually, I'm going to show you a couple ways to structure this. This is just the easiest one for now. Request title. Next, the body will be request body. So just set these fields equal to what the user typed in. Next, save it to the database. Okay, easy enough with Active Record. Post, save. And then redirect to the home page return a redirect to the home page. Let's give it a shot. Publish our post, and it redirected to the home page. We're not displaying any of that dynamically yet, but let's give it a shot. PHP artisan tinker, app post, give me all of them, and there it is. It worked. So good job. You just submitted your first form. Now, it's true, we haven't done much validation here. We're going to have a full lesson dedicated to that, but we'll get there. Now, in terms of refactoring, you can also phrase this in a slightly different way. You could also say post create, and now you're going to give it an array of data. So once again, you could say title is request title, and body is request body, and that would do it. So when you call the create method, you give it the fields, and it will automatically save it for you. However, if you try this, it may not work. Let's give it another shot. My next title, and publish it. Nope, it fails. So this is the second hurdle that a lot of newcomers drop into. They come across a mass assignment exception, and they have no clue why. This is yet again another thing that Laravel is doing to protect you. Without a framework, you would be expected to understand all of these security concerns, but it's doing it for you. So the problem is we are mass assigning all of the fields. And by default, Laravel's kind of cautious about this, because what some people will do is they will do something along the lines of this, where they just pass all of the request data to this method. And as you can imagine, if you're not doing any validation, you're not doing any cleansing, and you just allow the user to submit any form data, whatever they want. And remember, users can always open a form and change inputs or add inputs. So even though you only expose a certain form input, does not mean that's the only thing that will be submitted to your server. So Laravel is protecting us against this. We don't want anything where an email address gets changed when you never intended to do that, or a billing ID is changed, or a membership status is changed when you didn't anticipate that. So we can deal with this in a couple ways. I'm going to hit Command-Z to go back a couple clicks. One option is to visit our app post model, and we can set this fillable section. So if we set a fillable property, we can give it the names of only the fields that we are basically okay with being mass assigned, like this, title and body. And that would do the trick. So if we give that another shot, this should work as we expect. Let's go to PHP Artisan Tinker, requery, and now we have 2 posts. So I would say this is a good habit to get into maybe initially, just to keep yourself safe. However, I think what you may find as you mature and you continue using Laravel is that honestly, this can get a little annoying. So we have a couple choices. One, guarded is sort of like the inverse. So fillable is our way of saying we accept, we whitelist any of these. With guarded, you would do the inverse. You'd specify the fields that you do not want to allow. And then it's basically a filter. Everything else will be allowed through except user ID. Now what you could do is set that to an empty array, which means we're not guarding anything. Let's do our third try, publish, and that will still work. And now we have 3 posts. However, one more thing you could do is rather than doing this for every single class, what you could do is create a parent class like this, app model. And then I'm just going to take all of this, and this will be our parent class that all of our other Eloquent classes extend. Let's do this. As Eloquent, we will extend Eloquent, and then I'm going to call this model. And now here, I will define guarded to an empty array. Now, post will extend not Eloquent's model, but our own model. Great. So now I can get rid of this. And again, the benefit is for every other Eloquent model I create in the future, I don't have to repeat this or remember to repeat this. It will automatically be inherited. So if you take this approach, I do want you to remember you don't have any protection in place. So it's up to you to remember only pass the fields that you are comfortable with being submitted to the server. In this particular example, this would be fine because we are assuming a title and a body. That's great. And even if the user manipulates the form and they add an input for the user ID, it doesn't matter because we're ignoring it entirely. But again, think about it. If you didn't have that and you had request all, then you potentially are asking to create a post where maybe they have a hidden input for the user ID. Well, they just reassigned who wrote this post. Or like I said, for a different type of model, maybe they could say subscription status, and they can turn it on, even though you never wanted to expose that behavior. All right, so if we're going to take this approach, we're going to be explicit by passing an array, or as we learned earlier, you could say request and then just provide an array of the fields you want. And this is generally what I will do in my own projects. So we've taken all of that and translated it to this. And even better, we no longer need to new up a post. So I get rid of that entirely. Pretty nice, right? We just refactored 8 lines of code down to 1. So let's give it another shot. My final test, my body, publish it. It still works. And if we fetch it, there we go. Excellent work. In the next lesson, we'll keep going.